podcast, next and final guest, is Amir Husain. Amir is the CEO of SparkCognition, and he's also the new author of a new book called The Sentient Machine, which you can tell from the title hits on a lot of the same points that we've been talking about here today. So Amir is coming in now. We're going to just hand him his mic.
Thank you.
Amir, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Aaron.
I want to start with the big picture easy question for you.
Sure.
Are AIs already active in warfare?
Within artificial intelligence, there are two classifications that are worth thinking about. There's artificial general intelligence, which is sort of human-level AI that can solve general-purpose problems. And then there's artificial narrow intelligence, which is pretty good human-level, sometimes even better than human-level, at a specific narrow task. And I would say that probably ANI systems of some types are active or at least experimentally deployed. This is just my view. But certainly not AGI systems, because AGI systems are not known to exist.
So you recently wrote a paper called Hyperwar with General John Allen, where you hit on some of these topics. And one of the things that you guys talked about was the question of how is AI going to play out in the future in conflict. For readers and listeners who maybe haven't had a chance to check the article out, can you just kind of sum that article up quickly for people?
So I think one of the huge changes that AI will drive in the future of war is this ability to separate decision-making from the human mind. And what that means is that when you combine the ability to replicate these systems that have AI running on them, I mean, there can be billions upon billions of these small embedded systems that are making decisions, either at the edge or in the cloud, you really have this federated, completely distributed way of making decisions that can all be synchronized, that can all plan. And that kind of synchrony, that kind of coordination, that kind of rapidity in decision-making has simply not ever existed on the field of battle. That's one. And the second major thing is that, you know, AI can be used to create this pretty immense David versus Goliath effect. And by that, what I mean is that you may be a smaller force, but with the rapid decision-making and the rapid action capability that AI imbues you, you can operate perpetually inside the OODA loop of your enemy, inside the observe, orient, decide, act loop of your enemy, and before they can even get a sense of what the heck's going on, you've already inflicted kinetic damage. So that tightening of the OODA loop, now, of course, the paper had many other aspects, but sure, these two, I think, bring out some of the more important things for this video, at least.
Well, I think that brings up an interesting question, which has been touched on a little bit throughout today, which is the question of, is AI going to augment humanity and augment human capabilities, or replace them and just simply do them better than humans can do themselves?
For the foreseeable future, I think in many scenarios, it'll be a question of augmentation. But, it's a very nuanced question because, for example, when you create an autonomous car, is that augmentation or replacement? If you ask the driver of the vehicle, it's replacement.
Right.
But if you ask the passenger that now gets to do many other things in the time that he or she would otherwise have spent driving with all that concentration, it's augmentation. So there is that fine balance. In some contexts, I feel that the OODA loops, and I'm coming back to the realm of battle, I think in some contexts the OODA loops will be so tight that I don't believe there'll be much room for human input in every such decision-making loop. I think that humans will still provide commander's intent. I think humans will still authorize modes of engagement, autonomous, semi-autonomous, or manual, for these systems for the foreseeable future. But in certain contexts, just like today we have the Phalanx CIWS system where in a 2.5 mile radius for a certain class of threats, such as sea-skimming cruise missiles or small approaching aircraft that are on a collisionary trajectory, these systems will autonomously take them out. So it's a very small scope of enablement for autonomy, and we know that that already works and that's already happening. But I think you'll see that expand, number one. Number two, as they say, the enemy also gets a vote. Right. So if you now have someone that you're dealing with on a near peer level that's creating a capability that's perpetually putting your OODA cycle at risk by being inside it, you must counter that. Otherwise, you're done.
One of the questions that was brought up earlier today was the question of if the U.S. is in an arms race with China or another near-peer competitor with this type of technology. And there's some disagreement about whether that's the case or not, because not everyone sees it necessarily in the battle head-to-head situation. Where do you come down in that particular question?
I think that artificial intelligence is so broadly applicable that to characterize the AI race as purely an arms race is to miss the forest and only see the trees. I think that AI will enable economic dominance, economic advantages in healthcare, and therefore betterment of your population, of your citizenry. I think AI will improve planning and can create can restore public spaces to the citizenry by creating management systems for autonomous vehicles that drastically cut down the amount of land that we have to repurpose as parking lots and highways and so on and so forth. My company is working with some of the largest energy companies in the world to improve their efficiency and cut down on their unintended failures so that you can make alternate energy cheaper and more efficient. So AI is so broadly applicable, and I've even just only barely scratched the surface, that to dimensionalize it and then to think about it only as a military technology would be, I think, excessive. There's no real reason to do that. However, if you look at the history of technology development, say in this country, many of the compelling technologies that made their way into the civilian domain did come with a lot of, they came from the military sphere, whether DARPA funded them or whether they arose of a need in SAC or,
famously, the internet is the classic example.
Yeah, exactly. ARPA. And then that later became DARPA. They did the internet, but many of the technologies in the cell phone, GPS, was a weapon of war. I mean, was a technology for the pursuit of war. The fastest jet engines, the most advanced designs for aircraft. So I feel that there's a huge connection between the kind of innovation that the defense community has put forth and its subsequent commercialization. Artificial intelligence is probably the most broadly applicable technology that one can cite, even in history. So given that that's the case, of course, defense is still, given the nature of man and given man's lot thus far on this earth, clearly, military affairs are a big percentage of what concerns man. We hope that wars diminish and suffering ends and no two countries ever enter into a kinetic fight with each other. But until those things happen, the technologies of war also are a deterrent. So until we resolve the issue of the intent of man to not have the correct deterrence in place is also probably not the best idea.
We're starting to hit against the clock, unfortunately, but I wanted to take a minute that we have left and just talk to you briefly about the book that's coming out, The Sentient Machine.
Yeah.
Obviously relevant to what we're talking about. That comes out fairly soon, correct?
Yes, it actually starts shipping the 21st of November, 2017, and the first book launch event, there's going to be a tour, but the first event is happening in Austin, Texas at Book People on the 20th of November.
All right, so a little Christmas stocking stuffer there.
That's right.
30 seconds, just lay out the book.
I, thought about what a book on AI would look like if it was written with the kind of thinking that, say, the Greek philosophers employed when they contemplated questions. Existential on the one hand, scientific on the other, and very personal. It really talks about my own journey, my own love and affection for this whole notion of computing and the potential that artificial intelligence holds. And there are several arguments. I think many readers will find some new things in there. But one of the arguments is that in giving birth to artificial intelligence, we are realizing our potential. And in trying to place curbs on it, we are actually taking away from our own capacity as great builders and great inventors. And if we do that, we'll do that out of fear. So my view is that AI is now part of us. It's now part of this universe. And for philosophical reasons and scientific, practical reasons, I advocate that we should continue to invest in it. But you'll find some personal vignettes. You'll find lots of AI application stories, which we are, my company and I are personally involved with. And I intended it for it to be a little bit of a different book on AI, and I think it's pretty close.
All right. Well, Amir Husain is the CEO of SparkCognition and the author of the new upcoming book, The Sentient Machine, which, if AI is doing its job, has probably already been ordered for you on Amazon. So, Amir, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. And folks, that's it for our little interview segment here. Again, I'm Aaron Mehta with Defense News. We're going to take you back to the main CNAS event. Thanks for watching.